Well, what a hell of a game. What a disappointing, heartbreaking result for Ohio State. These are snap judgments. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Buckeyes go on the road, play just an absolutely wildly entertaining game. Twists, turns, ups, downs, highs, lows. They fall one play short, one call short, one scramble short. I'm not sure which one of those things to actually point to, but one play short of a big win. Oregon wins 32-31. I don't know. What's the easiest way to sum it up, Berm?
I mean, I don't know if there's an easy way to sum it up. I mean, it's a game where if you look at the scoreboard, if you look at the box score, it tells a bunch of different stories. I mean, the reality is Oregon did whatever they wanted offensively, but Ohio State pretty much did as well. Ohio State turned the ball over, and Ohio State committed more penalties, and we're not going to parse through everything that officials maybe could have done different at the end of the game to give Ohio State a chance to kick a field goal to win the game. But what you realize here is that all offseason, Ryan Day's had one message, and it was, don't let it come down to one play. And it came down to one play, and for Ohio State fans, it probably feels pretty similar to the 2022 loss against Georgia in the Peach Bowl. You get the drive, you get into field goal range, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, everything stops. Certainly can ask some questions. In those situations, you got 40-some seconds, why you don't run the ball when Oregon may not be expecting it.
Still had the timeout.
You still had your timeout. You're at the 28. All you needed to do was stay there and not go back 15 yards, which they did because of pass interference penalty on Jeremiah Smith, which, again, whatever. I mean, these are the things that you deal with. Kudos to Oregon. Really good team, really explosive team, really strong, physical. I think that's the thing that stands out to me the most is that I didn't expect Ohio State to be out-physicaled. After all of the talk that we've had in the last couple of years about the Michigan losses and how you just can't allow yourself to get physically beat, and they did. And I don't know what really caused it. Really bad tackling by Ohio State. I mean, the touchdown by Dylan Gabriel to take the lead, Lathan Ransom just flat out whiffs on him multiple times throughout the game. Oregon's drive at the end of the third quarter to hit Ferguson over the middle, and Ransom bounces off of him. Yep. Cody Simon bounced off a couple guys early. Arvell Reese bouncing off guys. I mean, it's just something where you don't want to take away credit from Oregon. They were a good team. Like, they're not ranked number 3 in the country for no reason. These two teams are very likely to play again, and I don't know that it will go the same way because I don't know that Ohio State will shoot itself in the foot over and over. But if you're an Ohio State fan, that's what makes you mad. Like, this is not a game that you felt like you had to lose. And you still, all the things that went wrong, you still lose by just a point. And then on top of that, you lose your starting left tackle, likely for the season with Josh Simmons having a non-contact injury. You lose your starting tight end with Will Kazmarek going out of the game with a broken arm, it looked like. And so you get insult to injury, and that's a recipe for a very bad night.
When you say out physical and lost it that way, I don't feel like that happened offensively. I thought,
no, not offensively.
Yeah, and I think that's important because even what you mentioned, Ohio State put in Zen Mahalski, they were still able to execute the offense. They didn't score as much in the second half. Obviously, they didn't execute.
Both
quite
teams
as well.
scored 10 points in the second half,
yeah,
so
it was a good battle. But then they still were able to get themselves in position. They protected Will Howard well enough. Now he did, he took a sack. There were some penalties throughout the game. To say that Ohio State was flawlessly executing with the football would be wrong. But in terms of the physicality, they were able to run the ball to get tough yards. They were able to throw the ball. Will Howard was able to extend some plays. The one he did on the touchdown throw to Jeremiah Smith in the second half was that in the second half? Yeah. That was a phenomenal play by Will Howard and Jeremiah Smith both. I think that the physicality part, which is going to sting, I think, for Ohio State, certainly for Jim Knowles, is it's not what we were talking about necessarily after Georgia. That was like some schematic issues that we were picking on and maybe too aggressive and Lathan Ransom slips or whatever. These are the issues that were happening against Michigan, and Connor Stallions are not. They did not control the line of scrimmage. They did not make the tackles that they had to. Everyone has watched those previous few meetings. That's what it reminded me of, and that's what I think is the troubling part when you project this forward. If you're going to play Oregon again, can they be better? Yeah. Penn State on November 2nd, you're going to have to execute better defensively. You're going to have to meet the moment. And it felt more like a Michigan defensive performance from Ohio State the last couple of years.
Yeah, they just didn't really look like they had a read on what Oregon was doing all night. And that coming into the game, we knew that was going to be the case. Oregon's motion, the way that they play action, the way that they do a lot of the read option stuff, like they are designed offensively to confuse you. They are designed to make your eyes go to the wrong spot. And for the most part, I mean, we'll have to watch tape like everyone else, but I thought that I thought Sonny Styles played well. I thought the linebackers did a fairly good job. This was the worst game of Denzel Burke's career. Let's just call a spade here. He, again, I don't want to take anything away from Oregon. Like, they clearly came into this game and thought, we can beat him.
Yep. And
they went at him all night. And Denzel multiple times was caught looking in the backfield when the defensive back, where the wide receiver was running behind him, and didn't play a very good football game. I mean, bottom line. So there was a lot of things happening, and schematically you wonder, like, is that occurring because the defensive line can't get close to the quarterback, or is that occurring because the defensive back is just out of position, or his eyes are in the backfield because of what Oregon does and because of the short passes and that sort of stuff that maybe allows you to try to sneak a peek into the backfield, and then all of a sudden Evan Stewart's behind you. So I don't know.
That's the hardest part for me to understand. If you had said to me, Dylan Gabriel's going to complete 35 passes and they're all going to go for 5 to 10 yards, and said, well, yeah, that sounds about right. And Ohio State doesn't get any sacks against that. Okay, you can understand that. And I'm not saying that sacks, again, are the only metric, but they were not just dialing up the short stuff. They were taking time, developing long routes down the field and hitting bombs on Ohio State. And at some point, when you have 2 5-star senior defensive ends, those are the guys who have to make the plays for you.
They got to win a rep. And I'm not going to say that anyone who's watched Ohio State football for the last 40 years knows that nobody ever called holding against the Ohio State defensive ends. Like, Jack Sawyer was mugged over and over in this game, but it doesn't matter because that is what happens in college football. But every once in a while, you got to get home. And we just, JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer did not have a night where they were, I don't know if they were in the scorebook, to be honest. I mean, if those guys aren't forcing the issue, and then you have Tyleek Williams off the field while those guys are on the field, and Jason Moore on the field at the 8-yard line Oregon's trying to score a go-ahead touchdown. Like, there's just things that I'm like, wow, I don't understand why these same issues keep happening. And we've watched a very important, I think, developmental process of Ryan Day over the last 8 months. And I thought Ryan Day and Chip Kelly coached their balls off tonight. Like, they went to it. They took shots. They took chances with the offense. They went, multiple 4th downs on their own side of the field in key situations that they got.
Off the bat.
And so I don't want to say, but like, there's a lack of cohesion on the defensive side of the ball from the coaches. It just seems like everyone is sort of freelancing, and I don't understand it.
Yeah, that part was exposed. And again, I'm looking at the defensive line, and I did not think that the pressure was good enough. If you want to be more critical of the secondary and the coverage back there, have at it. Both of them had breakdowns. Neither one of them were good enough. Both of those things can be true. It doesn't have to be one or the other. But if it continues to be both, we're going to have very different conversations about this team, because in this new era, you definitely get a mulligan. You can lose, even in the old system, you could have lost on the road to the number 3 team in the country, still got back into the Big Ten championship race, got a rematch potentially against Oregon, and been fine. You have slightly more breathing room in this era, but it's not going to get much easier for them when you have to go. Their 2 biggest games of the season, not counting the rivalry, are on the road. They lost the first one tonight, and then they have to go to Penn State on November 2nd, after this off date and after they play Nebraska, which should not be a major test for Ohio State. But now we're looking at a different version of the Buckeyes, because the injuries that they've largely avoided being severe and long-term, they have one for sure with Josh Simmons. Looks like maybe another for Will Kazmarek. Now, the offense did respond to that. I thought they played
Zen Mahalski deserves some praise. I mean, he did a nice job
tonight. Did too, and Austin Searveld had to go in and play again in stretches for Tegra Shabola, including in key moments in this game. So, that's positive. Yeah. They can build on that. But man, it's another really hostile environment and another really good football team. Now, Penn State has looked certainly beatable. They tried to lose against USC, but
They are more familiar.
The margin for error has really shrunk here, and the things to look at and be critical of has grown primarily on defense.
Yeah. And this is one of those catch-22s for us, because I do want to make sure that we're not dwelling on everything negative in a game that you lost, again, on the road to the number 3 team in the country, and you lost by a point. You should have kicked a field goal to win the game. Like, all of these things are true. Zen Michalski played a really good game. Again, I thought the offensive coaching aggression was really good, even though, again, I think people are questioning where's the deep downfield passing. But as we've said over and over, I don't think you need that to win. It's certainly nice to throw it out there sometimes when you have a guy like Jeremiah Smith or even Emeka Ibuka doing what he does. But there's a sickness that you feel when you realize you've given away the control of your own fate. And that is what Ohio State now has to deal with. Like, you're now in this sick, twisted world of having to hope Michigan beats Oregon in a couple weeks in the Big House. And, you have to take care of Penn State now, and it puts a ton of pressure on the Buckeyes. I'm going to tell you, I think this is going to end up being a positive for Ohio State, and I know people are going to be very annoyed by my saying that. Yes, you lose Josh Simmons, and that's going to be a real difficult thing to overcome, especially when you go to Penn State and Abdul Carter and what Penn State does with their rush ends. But I don't think that these guys are going to let this happen again this year. And there was a couple of different people post-game who you could tell, like, they're hurting in a major way. Will Howard, who is the most affable, like, welcoming guy. He was asked to do television interviews, and he said, "Nope, sorry, just not going to do it. Can't do it right now." Like, and he was saying, "I'm never losing a game like this again." So, like, you grow from it. I mean, I don't know what happened in the last 10 seconds of the game. It looked like the officials were trying to review it to see if Will Howard got down and Ryan Day had called the timeout.
Yeah,
he didn't. He didn't, and that's because, Will Howard had to know better in that instance. I don't know if he thought he had 10 seconds on the clock. I can't imagine he didn't look at the clock. But
here, I'm only going to push back on the thing that he should know better. This came up with the end of game situation for Tennessee and Nico Iamaleava a couple of weeks ago. You're not in these situations, and you're trying to get he knows.
Did they beat Florida today, or did they lose?
I don't know. I was a little
They were down like 10-0 in the third.
They took the lead in the second half, but I was a little bit focused and a little bit stressed out by
on what?
By the opportunity.
This game.
Yeah, this game.
My bad.
And the coverage challenges that come with Autzen Stadium. Anyway, I would say my personal opinion on this, and I didn't really be able to get into that with Will Howard or Ryan Day or Chip Kelly. Maybe we will later. But, like, you're not really in that spot where, like, okay, 5-6 seconds. How much time do you have? We can watch it. We're seeing it. We're looking at a scoreboard, or you're watching on broadcast. Oh, well, as soon as he pulled it, you know that the game's over. He doesn't. He's being told that they needed 15 yards to get it. Maybe he thought 10. Maybe he thought, I don't know, 6 seconds is long enough to get 15 yards and get down. But my point is, like, that's not a situation that I think is drilled or repped a lot for a quarterback. And so when that happened at Tennessee, or when that happened tonight, like, I sort of understand why. I think the part of he has to know better sounds good in theory, and actually putting in practice in a game for the one time that you ever face it is probably a little bit less realistic.
And again, there's a million little things we'll be able to parse through and say, that was a poor decision. I mean, there's just sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way. Will Howard, Ohio State.
Sometimes it's drilled directly off you on an onside kick.
Right. I mean, Ohio State was ready for it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, they put Caleb Downs on the field wearing that number 48 jersey in that spot. They had the hands team out there. They knew what Oregon was going to do, and the guy just hit it perfectly. Yeah. And sometimes you have to give credit to the opponent. Sometimes, however, it's on you. And Ohio State, Quinshon Judkins putting the ball on the deck when Ohio State's up 7-0 and getting the ball back, and like the offense starting to get going again. 3rd and 3 after Ohio State gets the 4th and goal stop at the 2-yard line. It's 3rd and 3 from the 27-yard line. And Will Howard just doesn't look at the snap and ends up taking a 10-yard loss, which means that you're now punting from the 17. Joe McGuire, he's doing the best he can. He doesn't have a huge leg, so that 10 extra yards, if you go 4th and 3 from the 27, Oregon scores 3 plays later on that drive. Like, you never know what happens in those extra. There's just there's a lot of little things that Ohio State did wrong, and they lost. And again, Oregon deserves credit, but Ohio State knows they're better than that. And it will be a fascinating exercise over the next 2 weeks to see what Ryan Day does to get something else out of this defensive line, to me, and to see now where Denzel Burke goes with his confidence, because we know they're not going to see receivers like this all year again until maybe they play Oregon again. But that was abusive what they did to him tonight. Yeah,
back home for Ohio State, back to a second off date, and that's it. That's a wrap on the first half of the season. They're 5-1. They're not in the position that they wanted to be. They've lost control of their destiny in the Big Ten race. Still very much alive in both that and the college football playoff, expanded playoff race. They can get into both of those, but certainly this is going to sting for Ohio State. Another huge primetime matchup that they come up one play short of and 1 point short of. They lose 32-31 to the Ducks. These have been snap judgments on the podcast. Appreciate you watching. I know it probably wasn't easy for most of you, but a lot more coverage will be coming your way as we get into the off date and what's going to be happening for the Buckeyes in the second half home stretch. He's Berm. I'm Austin. This has been the podcast from Eugene, Oregon. We'll see you later.